I'm Shauna McGill-Fagan and welcome to the Love NI Food podcast. This is where we celebrate Northern Ireland's food and drink industry. Our great food, great people and great stories. You know, we've so much to be proud of here in Northern Ireland. Our local food and drink industry contributes 8 billion to the local economy. Our local produce is exported to over 70 countries worldwide, and we can trace our food from farm to fork. And on the Love NI Food podcast, we let the people driving the industry here in Northern Ireland tell their stories. This episode of the Love NI Food podcast is brought to you by Andrew Ingredients, supporting Northern Ireland's food industry for over 80 years. On this episode of the Love NI Food podcast, we are talking to none other than probably one of the most dedicated food ambassadors on the island of Ireland, and certainly one of the most respected. He goes under the name of the Meat Man, the Meat Merchant, the Meat Guru. But I'm just delighted that today in the Love NI Food podcast studio, we have Mr. Peter Hannan. You're very welcome, Peter.
Well, what a glorious and generous introduction, Shona. Lovely to be here, and thank you very much.
Are you well?
Everything I know about is great.
Good.
So you can only worry about what you know about. So yeah, no, all good. All good.
Tell me, Peter, I know you are a hugely crazy busy man, and I would imagine that no 2 days are exactly the same. Can you give us an insight into what the Meat Man gets up to on a daily basis?
Look, we're very fortunate that we have a lot of variety. There are two no days the same. You know, we're not regimented. We're not dictated by anything really. We have a lot of flexibility and freedom, and that's a very privileged position to be in, to be able to choose what it is you want to do and when you want to do it and how you want to do it. Probably the one consistency is I've always been an early riser. I mean, I would be drinking tea and probably smoking a cigarette before 5 every morning. I've always been an early riser. Our trade is an early trade and one thing and another. So I have my desk clear by 7 o'clock. And the reason I like to do that, people say, did you really send me an email at 4:45? Well, yeah, but that's when I was doing my emails. Because if I can get my day cleared by 7 or 8 o'clock, it allows me all day to be able to do what it is I want to do at the pace I want to do it. And that's a tremendous luxury. So, I mean, I don't really work at all. I know you said how hard I work. I really don't, because I get out of bed every morning facing into something that I absolutely love doing. I can't get enough of it. I actually still get excited when I get out of bed about what can happen today, what we can do today, what we've planned to do today. And it's not really work. I mean, I know people say you're putting in hours, but when you're doing something that you love doing, it's not, I've always said to young people who ask me, just try and find something that you feel passionate about and make an occupation out of it. And if you can do that, you'll never work a day in your life. And I was very fortunate that I knew at a very early age what it is I wanted to do. I grew up on a farm, and I was slaughtering lambs for people's freezers at the age of 11 and one thing. Times were very, very different then to how they are now. But I was never in any doubt. I tried to persuade my father to let me leave school at 14, and he wouldn't hear of it. He hadn't been educated himself, and he insisted upon giving us an education and one thing. But I mean, I knew from I was 11 or 12, all I wanted to do was get out of school and get into the meat business. I just loved everything about it.
And your mother was an incredible woman, and I think she, unlike your father, she probably was part of the inspiration behind the love and the passion for
my mother
for food.
Knew everything, and quite often my father didn't, thankfully, know everything that was going on. But she was a very special person. She was a very special person, and she encouraged all of the good things. She encouraged them out here, the commercialism, as I say, the honesty, all of the things that are pillars of business today. She had in abundance, and it rubs off.
And she was quite the hostess back in the day, wasn't she?
God,
with hosting family and cooking dinner and
yeah. I mean, Christmas Day, we never knew how many. I mean, there was 5 children and my mother and father, so 7 for Christmas lunch. I mean, I remember 23 at the Christmas table. And she would just collect people. Anybody she thought wasn't going to have a Christmas lunch.
Wow.
She would just invite them, and then she'd send me to collect them outside the pub and bring them up in sort of in tandem. You'd bring up a carload and then go back for another car. So you never knew how many were coming, except you counted the place settings at the table and one thing. But she fed all Ireland. I mean, she was a feeder. I've no memory ever of watching my mother eat. Every memory I have is of her watching people eat. So her great pleasure, probably some of which has probably come off into me, is the pleasure of watching somebody enjoy something that you've created. And that was her great pleasure, not in eating it herself, but in watching people enjoy it. So
and she was your earliest teacher, and you learned incredible lessons about hospitality and feeding.
Yeah. No, it was a way of life, darling, in our house. I remember, I went to school when everything was done. School wasn't high on the radar. And I'm talking about when I'm 10 or 11 or that sort of thing. But every morning there was somebody coming to collect cattle or somebody coming to cut silage or this, that and the other, one thing and another. And if they arrived at the door at a mealtime, by and large, they were just fed. And I remember racing up from the yard, trying to get changed to go to school. And one thing I came in and my mother said, sit down there and get your breakfast. And one thing, and so I sat down and one thing, and there's this man sitting opposite me, great big kitchen table at home. And I'm wondering who. And I said to him, good morning. I said, are you here to lift something? And he dropped a knife and fork and he looked at me and he said, no. And I said, well, are you here to deliver something then? And he said, no. He says, I only stopped to ask directions.
And then he came.
He arrived at the door and one thing, and it was breakfast time. So you wouldn't be asked, had you breakfast or did you want breakfast? You'd just be told to sit down.
It was just put down in front of you.
That was the environment that I grew up in. So, it tends to rub off. I mean, I just, I relate and reminisce quite a lot about her and the way she was. And I see some of it in myself, of course I do, yeah.
So at 17, after you finish school, a very young Peter Hannan finds himself in the meatpacking district in Chicago. How was that, or how did that come about, Peter?
It was actually 19. I did a couple of years training just after I left school. 3 weeks after I left school, I was in a meat factory. And the reason I wanted to do that was when I went to America, which was what I planned to do, I wanted to have some skill so as I would be given the opportunity to do things at a higher level. So I needed knife skills and this, that and the other. So I went into a meat factory maybe 10 or 12 miles from home where we would have slaughtered a lot of our cattle and that sort of thing. And I got a job in there. And then I applied for my visa and this, that and the other. And I ended up going to a company in Chicago, E.W. Knipe. They were a tremendous business. And at 19, kicking away for a year. I mean, I've memories of, it was the 5th of January, 1979. And we were arriving into Chicago and there was a snowstorm and we were flying down low to sort of minimise the effects of the storm. So you could see everything underneath you and it was snowing like Billy and you could pick up the lights. But it felt like we were flying over Chicago for half an hour. And one thing, and I'll never forget the feeling of, the fact that there was 5 million people down below me. And I didn't know one of them. And that whole thing, it wasn't a storm or anything stuck with me. It was just the fact that I remember thinking this is so vast, so big. And, I don't know a single person. So that kind of gives you a wake up. You're going to have to get stuck in there and do things. So, it sort of hones your manners and, the way you approach things because you are singularly sort of on your own.
Yeah. I'm very young.
And young, yeah. I'd been at boarding school for 6 years, so I mean, I was kind of, that gives a certain independence, so to speak. But yeah, well, you're a long way from home. I mean, there's no strings attached. You sink or you swim, and one thing and another. And I had the most wonderful time in Chicago, and it was, I went over on the basis that if they would train me, I would work free of charge. I didn't need pay. I was able to subsidise myself, fortunately, out of selling lambs to people for their freezer and things like that there. Yeah. And I went over, and that was the basis. So I'd started at 4 a.m. with the first man that started, and finished in the evening with the last man who finished, which could be 6 o'clock in the evening. And the president of the company came to me after I was there for a couple of weeks, and he said, what are we paying you? And I said, no. I said, my base. He says, no, that's not happening. He says, when you're putting in the effort you are, he says, we're paying you. So it was, it was great. And they genuinely took an interest in me. The reason I went to America is, if you're training at home, you're a threat. You're a threat to somebody who's training you because they might make you better, or that sort of thing. When you're a long way from home, you're not a threat. Nobody is, denying you anything. I mean, they gave me a wonderful opportunity, and I was fortunate enough to be able to take it. So,
and would you do it again, or did you go to
America today? Isn't what America was then. But I would go away, yes, but I would probably go to South America rather than North America. Back then, America was probably 10 years in front of us. I'd say they're 10 years behind us now. But, the place that you really would learn and train and that sort of thing is down Brazil, Argentina, Chile, down around there. I was there not so terrible long ago, and they're world leading now down there, Argentina and Brazil in particular. So if I was my young self again, that would be on my radar rather than North America, I think.
Okay, so at 22 you found yourself back at home in Ireland, and you're one of the
21
highest paid executives in Ireland.
Well, it was written up by a magazine that I was the highest paid executive on the island of Ireland when I was 22. I don't know whether I was or not. I was earning a lot of money. I was running a business that was turning over 500 million a year, and we were hugely successful, and we were making a lot of money and doing things for my former boss, God rest him, Seamus Purcell. And it was a wonderful opportunity when I came back. The first thing I did was I got asked to look at a factory in Scotland that was closing down, and it was closing down in a few weeks. And my former boss at the factory I trained in asked me would I go over and have a look at it, and I came back and he said, well, and I said it's an absolute mess. Mm-hmm. And he says, yeah, that's why we're closing. But he says, is it fixable? I said, of course it's fixable. He said, would you give me 6 months and see if you can fix it? And he said, no obligation. He says, if you don't, we'll just close it. So I went to Scotland for 6 months, and it was blown at that stage. I mean, an obscene amount of money, but nearly £60,000 a week it was blown. And back then, that's
fortune.
All the money in the world. Mm-hmm. And after 5 months, we turned it into a profit. Mm-hmm. And,
big learning experience there.
Yeah. There was a lot of, but look, people think, you've the Midas touch, you did that. It's common sense. There was nothing that I had learned in America that particularly changed the thing. It was real wrong. It had been set up wrong, and you have to go back to scratch and set it up right. And then, you get an undeserved reputation of being a problem solver and one thing, and then everybody wants you, because everybody has problems. Mm. And if you're seen as a fixer, you're in high demand. So I ended up in a very good position, and we built a magnificent business. And then after doing it for 5 years, I got out of the meat trade and went back to America. And fast food hadn't appeared here yet. There was one abracadabra in the west of Ireland, and other than that, there was fish and chip shops, but no fast food. And I really fancied the idea of fast food, so I went over and spent time with McDonald's and Wendy's and Burger King and Fuddruckers and things like that. So I went away for about another 9 or 10 months, and we had missed the master franchise. Chap I went to school with came with me. He had sold out his business and he wanted to get into business together in the fast food. And we'd missed the master franchise for McDonald's by 11 days. They had given it away 11 days. So I could have been in the fast food business.
For the first franchise in the whole of Ireland.
For the master franchise, the one that opened a year later in Grafton Street, that was the first one and one thing. And that was the master franchise. So everybody else who had a McDonald's franchise in Ireland had to take it from the master franchise. And we'd missed that, and then everything seemed like it wasn't worth it. So we went, we spent all the time, we stuck to our schedule, we did our thing and one thing and we came back and we didn't go into the fast food business. He ended up going back to America 2 weeks later and has only been home twice since. And I ended up buying the family farm down in County Clare and went doing it up and buying cattle and trading horses and all the other things that I do as on the side that I love and have always done. And then my former boss asked me to come back to the business, and I said I'd come back for a short period of time, and then I ended up going into business I sold one of his factories to the man who owned Dawn Meats, Peter Quealy, God rest him. He died there a couple of years ago. He was a wonderful man. And instead of 6 months, I spent about 6 years with him, and we bought a lot of businesses together, I think 17 businesses or something like that, and we built once again an empire. It's a huge business today. I'm away from it a long, long time. And then in 1989, I decided I wanted out of the fast lane. I just wanted to do something far more personal and one thing another. And I came back to Northern Ireland and opened an office just above a fish and chip shop and started buying meat from the people I knew in Ireland and selling it to the people I knew in England and one thing another.
And that was how Hannan Meats came about, essentially.
We never had an eyeball on food service. It wasn't on our radar. We were buying and selling. We were making plenty of money. We were like a brokerage, so to speak. And chefs and restaurateurs heard there's a meat place in Moira, and they'd come up the stairs and sort of say, "Where's the meat?" And we'd say, "Well, we don't have any meat. We just buy it and sell it. But could you get me some meat?" And one thing. So when this had happened enough of times, we got a container and we said, we'll put in some meat and do what most people weren't doing, was mature it. Mature it for 28 days, 32 days, whatever. So when you give it to people, it's fit to eat. And I put a van on the road and said I'd drive it myself for 3 months to see if there was a business there. And 3 months later, Dave, who's my now general manager, took over the driving of that van, and we bought another one and I drove it, and we just built it up from there. And today I think we do about 450 restaurants throughout Ireland, the UK and Europe and one thing around. And it was never the plan, but you see, plans are restrictive. We don't kind of make plans. If it feels good, we do it. And, the business will lead you to the right place. It's, the shortest distance that we look out is 5 years. We're not into a quick buck. We're not worried about next week or next year. Can we build something sustainable that will be something great, perhaps, or a lot better in 5 years' time? And that's the way we kind of approach it, and it's a
big operation now, of course. Hannan Meats 30 years in. Can you give us an overview, a sense of where you're at now with the business and what that looks like?
Well, yeah, the business continues to grow and is going through another growth phase at present, and it's a substantial business. And we've kind of diversified into a few things. On Place Foods became part of us back some years ago. Tremendous business run by great friend Paul Clark.
A genius.
Doesn't have an equal. The greatest culinary genius I've ever encountered, and I'm a long time in the food business. And Paul runs that there, and then...
and they supply fascinating ingredients and added value.
Yeah, no, they're right at the coal face of everything that happens in the culinary world. I mean, we They don't retail themselves. I mean, we make product for people who do retail. Condiments, sauces, all sorts of different food service required things they do. All the edgy stuff, they rely on Paul Clark. And I think we make the ingredients for 22 other small businesses in Northern Ireland. If somebody needs spices for their charcuterie or something to add to their oil or this, that, we do that because that's the scientific end of it and one thing. And, that's not commercial. That's just the fact that we love doing it and we like to see people building their business, and if we can help in any way, we have a very open mind to do that.
You've always had that reputation for just wrapping your arms around Northern Ireland artisan producers and helping them, But
we're all in the same boat,
Yeah.
And, everybody who's pulling an oar is helping. I mean, we very fortunate there back 24 months ago, we became custodians of Abernethy Butter. And when Alison and Will, after many years, were retiring, we couldn't see that Northern Ireland wouldn't have Abernethy Butter. And it's not that we had any ambitions to become part of the butter business or the butter world, but we're thoroughly enjoying building it into... We got handed a beautiful child and we just want to rear a lovely adult. Yeah. So we're part of that process. And that, those aren't always commercial decisions. Northern Ireland punches way above its weight on a world scale and one thing another. So you don't want to be losing lovely things. You want to be building lovely things. And if somebody else has done their time and built it as far as they can or they want, and one thing another, yeah, we're very happy to sort of become part of it and take it over and build it, but we're all in it together. Like it's we're all brand Food NI. We're all brand. Everybody does their bit in it, whether it's a big way or a small way. It doesn't matter. We're all part of that there. So it's very important to collaborate, to work together. And I think we have a synergy in Northern Ireland that there isn't anywhere else. I haven't seen it anywhere else in the UK or the South of Ireland or anything like that, where the collaboration is dynamic amongst people. And the willingness to help in whatever way.
Yeah.
I mean, over the years, we've been privileged to help a number of people get their business off the ground or get it into its next growth phase. And sometimes that's a little bit of management help or a little bit of financial help or this, that and the other. We've always been happy to do that because...
With Abernethy, I just wondered, were you just, a culinary mastermind of trends? I know you love that particular product. And recently, I don't know if you're aware, but the Independent produced a culinary trends report for 2026. And in this report, #butter was featured. Now, #butter talk apparently has had something like 26 billion views on TikTok.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, he's such a smart boy, Peter Hannan. But I know, I know.
No, it's look, I absolutely love butter.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember I was down in Portugal 2 years ago at Christmas and one thing, and Alison rang me and the business sold, and the person that had bought it couldn't see it through or whatever.
Yeah.
And I rang Paul Clark and I said, butter. He said, I thought you were away on holidays. I said, I am. And one thing, and he says, you ring me on New Year's Eve and you just say butter. And I said, what do you think of butter? He says, I'm a chef. What do you think I think of butter? And I told him what had happened with Alison and Will. And I said, do you want to give this a go? He says, you and I'd make some job of that. And I said, I think so. So I rang Alison and said, darling, I'm home on Wednesday. I'll come and have a deal with you. No idea what it'll be, but we will have a deal. So I said, now please mind my Abernethy butter for me. Yeah. And look, when things
have you made it? Did they teach you how to make it?
Oh God, yeah. We
have you been there with the paddles?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm not a bad paddler.
I bet you aren't.
And my significantly better other half, Shirley, is a master paddler. Oh no. It's hands on, and we've some really exciting plans for Abernethy. We're in
More
a transition
flavours?
stage, yes.
Yeah.
So you want to see what's going into this year's Great Taste Awards.
Anything you can share?
Well, we entered one last year. It was a Seppin miso butter, and it got 3 stars, and then it won the Supreme Championship at the Great British Food Awards. So, and that was only one. We're currently building a facility in Moira, and we should be into it in the next 4 to 6 weeks. We've made a significant investment to be able to make butter exactly the same way, but with a little bit of help from technology and things like that there. Abernethy were recently voted the 3rd best butter in the world,
Yes.
after 2 French butters. Now, you know me well enough.
I do.
You know that we're looking at that and sort of saying, how do we make it into the best butter in the world?
Yeah.
So our plan is to try and achieve that as we go forward. We will never, ever dilute any of the integrity of Abernethy butter, but we would like to be able to put Paul Clark's thumbprint on it. Aside from my ambition, he's the man who makes things happen.
You know, at the heart of every great Northern Ireland food story are the ingredients that make it possible. For over 80 years, the team at Andrew Ingredients has been the steadfast partner behind our thriving food industry. They're based in Lisburn. They're a proud family business with a team dedicated to helping local producers grow and innovate. Whether you're an artisan startup or an established local brand, Andrew Ingredients is proud to champion the people who make our food scene so special. To learn more about their story and how they support the local industry, head over to andrewingredients.com or follow them on socials at Andrew Ingredients. But you were known for slipping when you were supplying these restaurants throughout the UK. You were known to slip a little bottle of Brighter Gold rapeseed oil and a little bit of Abernethy butter and a little bit of this and a little bit of that into your deliveries that were going to the UK. And what a generous thing to do, you
should
know?
always try and spread the goodness. We are very, very privileged. For example, we're supplier to Fortnum & Mason for about 15 years. And when you talk to and deal with and speak with the food director of Fortnum & Mason, who, I mean, you can't pick up the phone today and ask to speak to the food director of Fortnum & Mason, but I would speak regularly because you're doing things with them and you're collaborating on things and you're supplying them and this, that, and the other. So when you've an entree into that person and you see, God, those Neary Nogs chocolate or that Abernethy butter, this, that, and the other, that's a Fortnum's product all day long.
Yeah.
Why not slip it into the box and ring and say, Andrew, your butter tomorrow morning on your toast is Abernethy butter, don't miss it, and one thing. So, look, I think it goes with the territory. You should always try and spread the goodness. If you can do something for somebody that doesn't break your heart, you should always do it. It doesn't cost a lot, to pick something up and pop it in a box. And generally, we wouldn't say anything to anybody in case it doesn't stick. But I think we've had... Somebody told me we've managed to have 22 Northern Ireland products listed with Fortnum & Mason, and it's because we're in that position that we can do it, and with that goes a responsibility that you should do it. Mm-hmm. Maybe some people don't care, but I actually do.
So part of the expansion plan for Hannan's going forward involves another incredible producer, a Spinney charcuterie.
Yeah, look, I suppose the ambition is to collaborate with people, and where we need to maybe do it ourselves. We have access to so many wonderful things. And the ambition is to kind of build a family of fine food. So everything inside the circle. Same people who buy our meat want to buy our butter. They want the best charcuterie in the world, which will be coming from a Spinney charcuterie. They want different condiments and sauces coming from En Place. So anything, and we have other things on the radar, a couple of very exciting things that we cannot share today.
Oh, Peter.
But I will come back and tell you all about them.
Please do.
But, things that are important in food, we like to take them from, if we can, a good place and just take them up a step or two. And, they all fit inside in the same circle and one thing and another. So, yeah, that's kind of where our ambition is, to continue to build a family of fine food in a collaborative way, in our own way if needs be, and one thing. We've no preconceived ideas about how it gets done, so long as it gets done.
And what about your succession plan?
Oh God, yes.
Yeah, tell me about your lovely young son Richard joining you in the business.
It was brilliant. It was never the plan. He didn't plan it, and I didn't plan it. And then we were having lunch, the middle of last year, and I was like, we were just having a conversation, and I was telling him, that we're putting together a team just to sort of, I don't know how much longer I'll have, but I don't have forever, so I'm realistic about that. So I was just telling him, for this to run on one thing, or putting a team in place, and I said, if you have a notion of playing on the team, I said, tell me now. And I said, that's not an invitation and it's not an obligation and one thing. And he looked me across the table and he said, I'd love to. So he joined us in the middle of last year, and it's wonderful. I mean, first of all, it gives you a totally different perspective. You're not looking out 5 or 10 years. Now we're looking out 30 years. And we still have the energy to build. And provided we don't run out of time or money, we'll continue to try and build for the next 30 years now.
Is he keeping you in line?
Oh, yep. Yeah, he is. He's a very, very able young man, and manners, respect, all the good things. He's far better than I am, and he is a good springboard. So, yeah, hopefully they'll do wonderful things. And so long as they're doing something they love, and he loves it, so long as they're doing something that they love and they're doing it to the same level and one thing and another, I think they'll be very successful.
And does he have your inherent passion for good food?
Possibly more. He grew up in that world. He grew up in that world and one thing and another, and we've always been very close and that type of thing. But as I say, yeah, I think he probably got all my good bits and didn't get any of my bad bits. Look, there's a great food vibe in Northern Ireland. I'm very, very grateful and privileged to be part of it, and one thing and another. And we drink that in all the time. It's wonderful. And the last 15 years have been a hugely exciting time in the food industry in Northern Ireland. We're now getting the recognition for doing things as well as we do, and we have raw materials round about us in abundance. And, harnessing those things, I think there's lots of exciting things in the pipeline. We haven't done the best of it yet. It's all to come.
The best is yet to come. You heard it here first.
I think so. Yeah, no, I think the best is yet to come. I think there's wonderful things happening.
Can I bring you back, Peter, to that chance encounter with your wonderful friend Mark Hicks, the renowned chef in the London scene? That chance encounter outside one of his restaurants, it really changed the trajectory of Hannan Meats, didn't it? Can you tell us about that? And
yeah, God, every time somebody says to me, are you giving up smoking? I always kind of think, oh, Jesus, give up smoking and it's all different. Because the amount of people I've met over the years, of which Hicksy is one, Charles Campy, not that he was smoking, but I met him outside while I was smoking.
Yeah, because you're an expert smirter. There's a name for guys like you. Smirters. Ooh. Smoking and flirting. That's how you met Mark Hicks.
Yeah, we had just had dinner at his restaurant. He'd only opened his first restaurant down in Farringdon, down just beside Smithfield Market. And we were there on a Christmas party, a business I had in the north of England. The lads wanted to go to London, wanted to go to Mark Hicks' restaurant for their Christmas party. So I was there was 12 of us. And I was the only smoker, so I slipped outside for a cigarette and one thing and another. And while I'm smoking, who walks out? Only Hicksy. And he says, good evening. And I said, good evening. And one thing. And he says, you've just been in the restaurant? And I said, uh-huh. And he says, how was your meal? I just thought, the easy thing is just to say, it was lovely. And then the conversation just moves on. I just thought, do you know what? I knew Mark. He hadn't an idea of who I was. I was just a punter who had been having dinner and I was standing outside smoking one thing. I said, you've a gorgeous restaurant, but I said, I think you could find better meat. And he said, oh, and one thing, and he says, see that over there, Smithfield Market? He says, that's the biggest market in Europe. And he says, I still, I cannot get just exactly what it is that I want. So I put my cigarette out, and one thing, I was walking past him, and I said, you know what, if you've a date to rip up in the new year, this was the 12th of December. I said, if you've a date to rip up in the new year, come to Northern Ireland. I said, I'll show you something you've never seen. And he whipped the card out like a lightning strike. And he said, you will call me, won't you? And I said, no, you needn't worry about that. I said, I've told you I'll call you, so I will. That will happen. But I said, whether you choose to come or not is entirely up to you. So February came, and I rang him one Saturday evening, or sent him an email one Saturday evening saying, you mightn't remember me, I'm the guy you met outside your restaurant, fagging and this, that, and the other. I said, if you still want to come to Northern Ireland, I said, give me a few dates. And I said, if you don't, and I knew he'd see Hannan Meats under their email and one thing, and I thought, he'll just think this fella's trying to sell him something or been a smart arse or that sort of thing. And he'd probably say, oh, I'm busy. And that's fine. I did what I said I'd do. And an email came back within 10 minutes. Can I come for 2 days? I said, yep. So anyhow, Mark's PA rang the following day and everything was lined up, and he came over and spent a couple of days, and we're at the airport, and he says, I've good news and bad news for you. And I thought, Jesus. And I said, look, you don't know me well enough, but I said, I'm bomb-proof. So I said, you can give them to me in any order you want. And he said, last night I ate probably the best steak I've ever eaten. And I said, I hope that's the good news. And he said, And I said, how do you follow that with bad news? And he says, well, the bad news is you're now my new meat supplier.
Oh, wow.
And I said, Mark, I didn't bring you here to sell you anything. And I said, I'm not going to supply you with meat, because I said, that wasn't the purpose. But I said, what I want to do is show you that you can get maybe something that is there. And I said, we'll work on that together and one thing. But I said, I can't get the service from Northern Ireland to give you the service you need to run your restaurants. So I said, for that reason, I said, I'll help you in every way. But I said, I won't supply you from here. But we became great friends. We went fishing and all sorts of things, one thing. And we managed to get things he needed done and all that. And then about 2 years later, we had a bacon chop in the Great Taste Awards that was awarded 3 stars.
Yes.
And he rang me this Saturday night and he said, Pete, see this bacon chop? He had been judging, so he knew it and he tasted it. He said, I need to get 300 or 400 of them a week for London. He says, how do we do that? And things had changed in the meantime. And on the phone call, I loosely said, Mark, don't worry, we'll get it set up. To which he replied, well, if you can send me bacon chops, you can send me all my beef as well, can't you?
Oh, for goodness sake.
So all of a sudden, he's now opened another restaurant, and we opened 6 more together after that. But all of a sudden, probably the best client in London is now a client, and Mark's network and the people we supply today and the people Mark has introduced us to over the years. And Mark Hicks is just one word, just puts him in integrity. Everything. There is no back doors. There's no shortcuts. He's very much our speed. It's just put it in the middle of the table. We look at it, call it for what it is, and we'll handle it however it needs to be handled. And that's the way. He has become a wonderful friend. He's been a great advocate. He's been a huge support. And I hope we've been something similar, reciprocal to him. But yeah, that was a turning point in
a pivotal point.
Yeah, a pivotal point in where our business ended up going. And one year we do far more into London than we do in Northern Ireland, for example. And Northern Ireland's on a van. We fly out tons of steak on the flight every night out of international, and it goes to a lot of very fine restaurants.
And did he play a part in the development of the Himalayan salt chamber or not?
No. Look, that was all had taken place
before.
Yeah, quite. Yeah. We had been working on that, would you believe, for 7 years before we built a salt chamber. The time, effort, and the reason nobody else is doing what we're doing anywhere in the world is they didn't put in the spade work. They didn't do the sweat and the grime and the bills and the this, that and the other. We educated ourselves in what happens when you want to age a side of beef or a piece of beef or something like that. So, no, it was purely coincidental that around about the time that we started to supply Hixie, about a year later, when he was opening the Tram Shed, a huge 300-seater restaurant in Shoreditch, that we had aspirations for opening our first salt chamber. And he came over and we shared everything with him, and he says, that's what I want to open the Tram Shed with. And
with the Himalayan dry aged.
That was the first of it that went anywhere except the Great Taste Awards. The year it went in, we entered 7 pieces, 7 steaks or primals or whatever into the Great Taste Award. And every one of the 7 got 3 stars. And every one of the 7 got into the top 50 foods. So it created a big splash.
Tell us about the process, Peter, if you will, how these Himalayan salt creates the right environment for creating the best meat in the world.
The salt is the sexy bit, so it gets all the headlines. Okay, it's only one player. It's probably the differentiator on the team as part of the process of aging meat. In what you've got to do is you've got to try and create an environment where the things you want to happen, the good bacteria that helps to tenderize your meat and one thing and another, is in play. And if you can prolong the longevity of that, that's what you're after. Then the bacteria you don't want there, the one that makes it mold and taste of blue cheese, that interferes with the very delicate flavour of beef, how do you inhibit those? So, there's airspeed and there's temperature and there's humidity and there's all sorts of other things in play. But the salt gets the headline because it's the sexy bit. Could we do it without the salt? No, we couldn't. But could we do it without any of the other things? No, we couldn't. So it's a culmination, it's a process, and keeping the perfect balance in the environment so as that a piece of meat is allowed to age indefinitely. I mean,
how indefinitely?
Well, the oldest control, okay, because we've had to prove the system the whole way along with the Department of Agriculture and Environmental and all this, that, and the other, to say, you can't give somebody a piece of meat 100 days old. Oh, but yes, we can. And we can give it to them 200 days old and 300 days old and 400 days old. We put a piece into the Great Taste Awards at 445 days old, and it got 3 stars. And part of the reason for putting it in was the due diligence of proving that we didn't kill any of the judges. This had never been done before. So, we have to prove the whole way. But the oldest control we have in our salt chamber, and this is once again all part of the due diligence, was slaughtered on the 1st of April, 2015.
Wow.
So it's 11 years
How does it look?
Slaughter. Fantastic. But
how do you think it'll taste?
No, we're not going to eat it. It's a control. It has to be there. So we've tested that meat at various different stages the whole way through. Today it's a piece of charcuterie because it's been there a long time and dehumidified and all that sort of thing. Yeah. But it still maintains its place on the rack and all of the controls and things like that there. So, we can hold meat indefinitely. There's no requirement to. The average, we supply Fortnum and Mason with 80 and 100-day aged meat every week in life. But, we like the sweet spot about 40 days in that environment. Now, that's not the same as 40 days in somebody else's, because most of them wouldn't be able to hold it for 40 days. And if they can, it will be done under a different system entirely to what we're doing. So we can't compare, nor do we care about what somebody else is doing. But through our process, we kind of, Pat Whelan merchandises our beef in the south of Ireland together. And we send everything to Pat between 35 and 40 days old because we reckon that's the sweet spot. And by the time his clients are getting to enjoy it, it's 40, 45 days old in Monty Ireland. It's a beautiful thing.
And your dry aging lamb pork as well as the beef. Yeah. And that's where that stunning pork chop comes from, that 3-star award-winning.
That's our sugar pit.
Your sugar pit, yeah.
Sugar pit. Yeah, the sugar pit's a different. It's a process. It's not very complex, but the world has tried to copy it, and I don't see anybody landed on it yet, but they probably don't put in the work rate that we do in innovation. We're at it every day in one thing, and we've learned a lot over the years. As I say, we might be poorer because of it, but we're richer for the education, and education isn't free. It's a piece of very nice pork that we take and we cure it, and then because you're drawing moisture out, you're creating kind of a sponge-like effect. So it wants to replace that moisture with something. So we submerge it for 10 days in a blend that Paul Tarks makes for us of sugars and a little bit of spice. And because it's had the moisture extracted, it takes this great big lug. So we replace some of the moisture we've taken out in the curing process with this beautiful blend of sugars that is like a syrup, and that's our sugar pit bacon.
It is just the
it would
most
be my
delicious.
last meal.
It would be mine too.
Yeah,
because it's almost like the new take on your Spuds cabbage and bacon.
Yeah, that would be
the perfect meal.
That would be my last meal. Is with parsley sauce
and Abernethy butter. Yeah. That goes without saying. Which one, Peter? Which flavour? Just the straight up Abernethy, or?
Yeah, no. For something like that. Yeah, no. I mean, there's some lovely ones to place on a fillet of turbot or put on a steak when it's resting and one thing or but
just the original.
Just the salted Abernethy butter is a lovely thing. Do you see what we're going to do with the buttermilk? Now that's a really, really nice. We have a really, really nice suite of options, I would say. But just, I mean, buttermilk should never be a byproduct of something lovely. It has to stay in the circle. So what we've been doing for the last 18 months is we've been feeding the buttermilk on a daily basis to rare breed pigs, beautiful Oxford Sandy and Black pigs, with the loveliest man who had this herd of beautiful pigs in one town. We're collaborating. So we're all of the
not the curly pigs.
No, not the curly pigs. Okay. No, these are Oxford Sandy and Black. They call them the plum pudding pig. They would be my favourite breed of pig. But look, everybody has a favourite. So we've been feeding the buttermilk to these beautiful pigs, and we're now producing buttermilk pork. As I said to somebody, we're marinating them from the inside out. It's a really nice thing. So we have that pork and that bacon coming forward, but we're primarily looking at it from the point of providing a truly exceptional product for our Ispini charcuterie.
Okay.
So we have this incredible pork, incredible fat, and one thing, and that's what you need to make incredible charcuterie.
My mother was reared on buttermilk.
Oh God, yeah.
And drinks her buttermilk most mornings.
You go into some of the supermarkets there and you get 6 gut shots for a tenner.
Exactly,
you
that's why.
See what we're doing with buttermilk just right now.
Oh, Peter.
Now I'll tell you
one thing.
This will be, I mean, it is one of the best things that you could consume.
Absolutely, for your gut.
How we present it, and we're doing a lot of work and doing a lot of innovation on what we have not made any commitments to anybody at this point in time. We've everybody saying, what about the buttermilk? Can we get it from one thing? And we've just said, no, not yet. It's still going to the pigs. But we've done a lot of work in the last 12 months on buttermilk and how we're able to do something that nobody else is doing, and we're quite excited about it. We just have to get it over the line, get them installed in their new facility and get it over the line, and then maybe we'll be able to do something really nice.
This is fascinating. I am very excited about this.
Oh God, you should be there at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Can we talk a little bit about social media?
Mm-hmm.
Because at Meet Peter, he who claims to be, what is it? A meat merchant, a decent cook, but a shite photographer.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. Now, come on. You have 135,000 followers.
When I think back on how that all kicked off, a great friend of mine, Andrew De Luca from São Paulo in Brazil, we're great friends. We see each other, whether I'm in Brazil or he's in Northern Ireland or we're down in Lisbon or in London or wherever. We see each other 3 or 4 times a year. He was the #1 pit master, in other words, barbecue chef in the world. And he was with us one day and he's taking a picture of stuff we're cooking in the kitchen, one thing, and he says, "What's your Insta handle?" I said, "What?" He says, "Your Insta handle." I said, "What's an Insta handle?" He says, "Your name on Instagram." I said, "What's Instagram?" He says, "You're not on Instagram." And I said, "I don't even know what you're talking about." He says, "Hold on here." And one thing, he says, "Give me a name." And I said, "What sort of a name?" He says, "Just give me any name." And I said, "Meet Peter." He said, "Oh, that's a good one." Okay, right. And the next thing, he has an account open for me. And he shares the photos, and he has at this stage 75,000 followers on Instagram or something like that. So all of a sudden people are starting to follow me because Andrew linked a picture and mentioned me in it, one thing. And that was all fine and well. And then a couple of weeks later on a Sunday, we're having lunch and this phone starts going ping, 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 ping. I said, "Whose phone is that making all that noise?" And my daughter says, "That's your phone, Dad." I said, "It's not my phone." I said, "It doesn't ring like that." They said, "It's notifications you're getting." And I said, "Notifications of what?" Well, Nigella had cooked a rack of Glenarm shorthorn beef and she praised it highly and linked me to it. And when my daughter looks at the phone, she says, in the last 7 minutes, she says, "You've had 4,000 new followers." I said, "Oh, sweet Jesus, the nice one today." So anyhow, she came to do a deal with me. She said, "Joe, you should do Instagram." I said, "I haven't time. I don't know what it is." No, she says, "I'll do it for you." This is my eldest daughter, Grace. She basically does the Instagram. I'd be carving a steak or something. She'd take a little video and flick it up there. But
but it's powerful, isn't it?
It's hugely powerful. I mean, and you've got to be part of it. I mean, it doesn't focus in my day, but it focuses in my life. The amount of people who have contacted me through Instagram is staggering. Clients even, they see something and say, "Oh, I've a chain of pubs in England, blah, blah, blah," and one thing, or "Who do I contact for a price?" So it's very powerful. It's very powerful. And we don't, at this point in time, utilise it as we could or should. It's on our radar today. We will get around to it. But it's...
But you've built an incredible community of food lovers who just enjoy checking out what you're eating on a Saturday night or what your Sunday roast is.
Look, it's wonderful to be part of anything that's good, isn't it? And it's very privileged to be there, and some of the people that we've met. I mean, I have now friends and good friends that I've met because of Instagram, and Instagram could be 10 years ago and I maybe only met them 5 years ago, and they're good friends today. So for us, there's been no downside to it. It's all been positive.
Very positive.
One thing or so. I mean, keep on, line them up if they're good.
Well, on that note, may I say there is only one Peter Hannan, that's for sure. And we are so grateful that you are here in Northern Ireland and being the wonderful supporter that you are. And thank you so much for joining us on the Love NI Food podcast. It's been an absolute privilege.
It's been a pleasure, and thank you for your very kind and generous sentiments. As I say, how many of them are deserved, we'll call later. But as I say, it's been wonderful to be part of this. This is our life. This is our everything, and hopefully our future for a long time to come. And thank you very much for having me.
You're so welcome, Peter. Thank you. This episode of the Love NI Food podcast is brought to you by Andrew Ingredients, supporting Northern Ireland's food industry for over 80 years.